G'day punters and haters, and welcome to this year's massive bumper Melbourne Cup preview from the Melbourne Pro Punters panel. As usual, Darren Potter. Happy Cup Day.
I want to ask you who the haters are, Jumpy, but I'll let you introduce it.
Early tribute to the haters.
Ray Straight Ralphie and a special guest,
Jumpy.
Nick Noonan.
Great to have the younger generation on board, Nick. Welcome, mate.
How old are you, Nick?
17.
Right, so we're talking for if you could bet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just checking.
Well,
Suit's older than you. I'm going to do wardrobe pods.
Well, just on the haters, last year's Melbourne Cup preview show was the biggest viewed show we ever had. There was 5 comments in YouTube and they were all negative. Hence the reason I went out and bought this hat not long after. So big hello to all the haters out there.
Because you wouldn't believe it. When 100 to 1 shot wins, not everyone finds it. It's quite surprising.
But I tell you
Does
what,
this mean, Jumpy, that you now that we've got here, we're doing a new show, that you'll be able to put this behind you?
I wouldn't have. I'm just hoping I'd give the haters more to reload with for this year.
Do you think they'll be back if they didn't like the show last year? Surely they wouldn't come and watch again, would they?
You know what lurkers are like, Potts. They'll be about.
Okay.
I guess we're doing this for nothing.
Yeah.
Happily, and providing information because we want to get people on board on racing and you know, for particularly Nick's generation and so forth. Do yourself a favour, get the Karma bus on site. So just particularly if your luck's in afterwards, chip something somewhere. And I'm donating my fee for. I'm emceeing the Melbourne Cup Day Parade tomorrow.
Okay.
And I'm donating my fee to Where There's a Will, which is a kid called Will Murray. I met his dad the other day, Nick Murray, cracking fella, who tragically just jumped off a pier and became a quadriplegic. The star Victorian footballer.
Yep.
It was blitzing everything. So there's a big fundraiser for him coming up. So if you want to get the Karma bus on site, have a look at Where There's a Will. Just Google that and you'll find that story there and chip something towards it because that's what I've done.
And a bit of racing connection there. I know the Murrays are pretty close with the Cleary family, who are the Rod from Big Bet, and Lyndon and Brendan Cleary, the family bookmakers. So there's a bit of a racing connection there, and that is a great cause. So
yeah, super.
Well done, Ralphie. Well, we've finally dragged ourselves through Derby Day in one piece, and we get to Cup Day, Potts. The track and the map.
Yeah, so we'll talk about all that. We'll have a bit of a summary of the race, and then we'll start getting into the runners. But for those that want to know a little bit more about Nick, so after this Melbourne Cup preview video, Jumpy and I are going to sit down and have a quick chat to Nick and just give you a bit of his background. He's from a good racing family, heavily involved in racing, and as I said, great to see a young man that loves his form and getting stuck into it, having a go. So good stuff. So I thought I'd just kick off with how I've approached this race. To me, it's a complex race. So we've got 11 overseas trained horses here, 4 of them that have had a Australian run off the plane, and 7 trainers that are obviously not interested in history. And who am I to criticise people like Aidan O'Brien and Michael Bell and so forth, but I think they would have been much better served if they'd had a run, but they haven't. So there's 7 of them appearing fresh off the plane. So that's one of the first things I looked at. And then I went, because last year we did the show, we didn't really have a long conversation about the map, and it ended up being the key feature of the race.
Correct.
And I think that's going to be fresh in the mind of a lot of the jockeys here, that they won't make the same mistake twice. And this race is completely different because we've got a bunch of horses that are natural on paces, and they're drawn right across the grid. And so you're going to have horses from the inside like Gallant and Big Orange, Jamaica, holding positions. You're going to have horses pushing forward from the middle of the pack like Kiwi and Grey Lion. Even Hartnell won't be too far away. And then you've got horses drawn right out wide like Assign and Curran Moronic that are going to ensure that there's going to be competition for the positions in the front third of the field. And even though it's a 1,200 metre run to the first turn, I think they'll be moving along with good momentum.
So Potts, what we want to really underline here, because we're assuming a lot of people who are once-a-year punters are having a look, and we want to give people some insight into it. Last year's map was, never mind the winner being 100 to 1, and everyone says, well, that's fantastic, it's a great story, and take away the story side of it, and then when, like a Go Dream narrative, but like Go Dream in the World Cup, it had no possible ability to win that race. But the Prince of Penzance had ability,
Yeah.
but just not sustainability. But when a race is run so slowly, it just comes down to a stayer with a good sprint, and he always had that good sprint, didn't he? So that race last year, the biggest outlier wasn't the result. The biggest outlier was one of the slowest run races you would ever see at that level, wouldn't it?
Yeah, the horses were not tested. Like, they weren't fully tested in terms of their stamina. What was tested was their ability to sprint over the last 800 metres. And there was no natural leader last year. Big Orange should have got it by default, and they were at that point of that horse's career. You know, he was lightly raced, and they weren't convinced he was fully mature, and they didn't really want to push him. And
sorry, that's why Big Orange wasn't going quickly last year.
Yeah,
that's good information. We'll get to that. So
I've just by pure chance last year, I went to a lunch both last year and this year.
Yeah.
And last year I sat beside the trainer of Big Orange. This year I heard him talk, and last year he was hopeful.
Yeah.
This year he's supremely confident.
Yeah.
So he's going into this race full of intent this year. So I don't think there'll be any messing around from his point of view. Not that he's going. I don't think he'll lead, but he'll be on pace. So.
But also, I suppose where that's important is that if others don't want to lead, and he's clearly been winning these races in the UK,
he'll be happy to lead.
That's the key thing. Yeah.
And this is also the difference between Potts and I. He goes to lunches where Michael Bell from England speaks, and I go to lunches where Mick Bell, who trains up the bush, speaks.
I go to both.
Boys, I ran into Mick Goody on Friday. He was very relaxed, and I thought the track played magnificently yesterday. I was saying that track's in such good health compared to this time last year. We've had all the winter rain. We've been talking about this. Potts, you've been out and walked a lot of the tracks. It just looks in great nick. There'll be no issues with anything to do with that. I wouldn't have thought even by that stage that even how many acceptors are there for Tuesday, Potts?
186.
Just 186 punters. That's something to just crack into.
So we've been talking about this track for months. He's had all the right weather through the winter. The rains were on at the right times. The shear was high there on yesterday.
Yep. They've
hardly marked it. I'm going out there this afternoon to have a look around. But
so again, because for those just tuning in and don't follow racing, what's that mean with the shear?
So people that watched the show we did earlier on in the year with Mick on as a special guest, he went through and explained all the readings on the going stick, and Mick's been really good to me, talking to me when I've been out there. And he said to me, "Pops, just keep an eye on the shear. That is a measure of the root strength.
Yep.
And the higher the number, the less they mark it. So if it's like a 9, it'll be in an old-fashioned slow track, and they'll get well into it. If it's 10, it's probably like an old-fashioned dead, borderline good, and they'll mark it a little bit.
Yep.
Once it gets above 12, it's a good track in our old language. It's sort of somewhere between a 2 and a 3 or whatever, and they won't mark it at all. So it was 12 point something on Saturday, and they would have hardly put a mark on it despite the large number of horses that race there on Saturday.
So if you're just tuning in as once a year, we had Mick Goody on a couple of months ago. He explained everything, both with what went wrong Derby Day, why he was so supremely confident coming into this spring, and yesterday, boys, just played as the world-class venue that it is, didn't it?
It did.
Well, you can either listen to Mick Goody or you can listen to the once-a-year dingbats that I saw out there walking the track yesterday, who wouldn't have seen that track for 12 months. So
there it is. I mean, I understand. I mean, there are still people that they might not bet regularly in Melbourne or whatever, and they're still scarred by what happened last year, and no one felt the pain of that more than Mick. But anyway, the meeting yesterday, the track we're going to get on Tuesday should allow everyone to put it behind them, and hopefully Mick will be able to, because he's a great guy, and he's done a great job. He just had one bad day, and no one felt it more than him. So
anyway, hello to Mick.
So anyway, I'm nearly. So I think what we're going to have here is a race with an appropriate amount of momentum above average, which is going to mean that the cream rises to the top, in my view. So that's one of the other key aspects of how I approach this race. And so I break those international runners into the ones that have had a run here, the ones that haven't, and then the locals, looked at the various lead-up platforms they're coming through and the strength of those.
Yep.
And I've tried to sort of line them all up. But it was a big task, and I enjoyed doing it. And with any luck, I'll find the winner. But what about you, Nick? How did you go about it?
Yeah, it's an interesting race. Like there seems to be a lot of on paces this year, and look, you've probably got a sign going forward from the outside gate. It said Big Orange. He's going to be up on the pace. And if something doesn't cross him, he probably can lead the field. Q's up there, so I think it's a very interesting race from the map.
How did you tackle the form, Nick? I know when I went through, I was just trying to find if there was any links between some of the form, especially the international form, which I do try and keep it a bit of an eye on, just with my past of living over there. You tend to tune in when the big races are on, and if I don't watch them live, I tend to watch them the next day because my Twitter feed normally alerts me to what's happened. So I was just going through looking for the links there and then trying to compare them to what sort of happened over here. There's one horse that we'll get to that I think's got a heap of recency bias based into it, and he's one that's in the market that I'm pretty keen to take on.
And the one, I think, overview which is interesting, and you've touched on it, Potts, is that about the advantage of having a run here historically.
Yeah.
I reckon it's always there's got to be a tipping point somewhere.
Yeah.
Of course there is.
Now, for those who don't know, since finished crop 1, the numbers we're up to about 80 now. We're 80 runners.
Yeah,
it's around about 70 or 80. I haven't got the exact amount, but have started the Melbourne Cup who have not international horses who have not had a run here prior to the Melbourne Cup who have failed. Now, one was Red Cadeau, who was beaten that much, and Red Cadeau continuously ran well in the race.
Yes.
And we've had many runners that have run well in the race. So what I'm saying is I don't think it's definitive, even though there's that amount of horses, but clearly there's an advantage to having had a run there. It's probably fair, isn't it? There's
Absolutely. I think that what I've garnered from that whole phenomenon, right, is that their first run off the plane is a very good one.
Yeah.
But their second run is slightly better. That's the point, right? So, Oceanographer ran tremendously well at Geelong and improved yesterday.
Yes.
Now, what he does on Tuesdays, the question mark, because not many of them have had 3 runs in that short of a space of time. It's a new thing. But the 7 horses that are here fresh off the plane, a number of them are very good horses, and they are going to run well. But I'm saying they have lessened their chance of winning by not having that additional run. That's my opinion anyway. There's too much evidence that they bounce. Like, look, Protectionist is a great example. He went around and I think the Herbert Power, and he ran a really nice race. And then he went through the roof in the Melbourne Cup, So every one of these horses are individuals, they're all different, but I think there's a lot of evidence to say that second run off the plane is the one. But anyway.
All right, boys. Well, let's crack into it.
We haven't got Ralph's. So what's been your main approach this right? Have you spoken to Vince yet? Is any of that stuff come into what you've done, or?
Yeah, well, I have, and that's mainly from the Cox Plate.
Yeah.
And since I've immersed myself in watching the speed of races over the last 4 or 5 years, I think my overview is, and really we actually touched about this before we rolled camera, the best way to run fast in a big race is to run fast in your lead-in. And that was the theme of Derby Day. And then with Hartnell, he won very slow Sydney races early.
Yep.
Dominated rubbish. The Toowoomba was a fairly quick race. Cox Plate was brutal.
Yep.
That is an advantage.
Yes.
A massive advantage, because then if you look, talk about recent years, Prince of Penzance, which people often forget, was so brutally run in the Moonee Valley Cup. That was half the reason everyone capped it. But now they walked, and various other reasons. But Protectionist, as Pot said, that was a fast Herbert Power.
Yeah.
Prior to that was we had Green Moon that came off a very fast Cox Plate as well, beating a similar margin to what Hartnell was, even though Hartnell ran second. I'm missing one here from 2013. But and Fiorente, which is a classic case, because Fiorente similarly was getting back in the field. Blakeston got criticised for his ride in the Cox Plate, but that actually brought him on, inverted his speed to then peak in the Melbourne Cup by going forward in the Cox Plate. So to me, I'm taking it as a massive advantage. Hartnell, and then it's a matter of trying to line up the internationals with them. But Hartnell clearly for mine, the ones that we've seen.
And also, we're all students of weights here, so they're critically important too.
Only our own.
they have a relevance, jumping.
Yes.
Well, once you've covered all the other dynamics in the race,
then you come
which
back
are really important.
then
if you're still stuck, then you can go to the weights if you want to.
Well, top of the weights is number 1, Big Orange. He's coming off a win in the Goodwood Cup and a win in the Princess of Wales at Newmarket. He ran in the race last year, ran 5th. I think he's got very good UK form for this. He's definitely one of the chances that I've got. I'll be on him. I just think he's in decent form, and I think coming back again this year, he's got the experience. And the only little query I've got, and if it was in Europe I wouldn't, but Jamie Spencer coming back over here, he seems to ride him once a year, so we could have put the gun on him.
What's the bet? We're going to mix it up, or how do you want to?
However you want, Potts, so you can crack in here. He's a $17 chance.
Yeah, I think that's good value. I think the trainer's intent, I think, is a really positive factor for this horse. He's had, I think, is it 4 runs since last year's Melbourne Cup? They've all been good. He's raced in a series of races where he's run fast throughout. I think that's the profile you need to win this year's Melbourne Cup, and I think he's. I think I'll be marking him in single figures, and he will be going around a winner for me.
Absolutely, and that's to me the it's almost you've given me some super insight there about why they went slowly last year, about that lack of maturity and concern over his maturity. So now I'm even more bullish about him being a serious chance. He Exosphere touted him.
Yep.
And then he touted Exospheric now. But the standout factor to me seems to be that one was on soft ground and one was on firm ground. So we're going to have a firm Melbourne Cup tomorrow, unless it doesn't look like Tuesday, but it looks like there won't be any serious rain coming. There'll be some.
Yeah, there'll be. But
Fleming trained so well, so I think assuming that it's, and certainly a UK soft is our heavy generally. I think top of the ground's a bonus for him. He's brave. He wants to fight when he's challenged, doesn't he, in his races? And he can run time. So to me, I'd rather look at him like a Red Cadeau type. He hasn't had the run here that as we've touched on is a historical advantage. But if you want to back the trainer in to know what he's doing, I think he'll run to his best. If he runs to his best, he's in the race.
Yeah, I think like our punters that haven't had time to line up all the overseas, taking a line through Exospheric, I think there's enough evidence to suggest that he's got at least 3 lengths on Exospheric's Caulfield Cup run. Anyway, sorry, Nick.
Well, if you look at his Goodwood Cup win, he beat Wickler Brave in that race.
Yes.
He comes into the Melbourne Cup as well, so he can really tie his form into this race pretty well. Last year's run of the Cup was probably a bad ride, we'd all say, I think.
But that's now we've got some reasoning for that bad ride, which is good.
So, yeah, he's definitely, I'd want him on my side. $17, I think that's a really good price. Little Query's 57 kilos, carried 55 and a half last year, now 57. Probably in a weaker race though. And maybe Jamie Spencer, as we said, comes out here once a year to ride in the Cup.
The gun sitting in the jockey's room, can't understand it, but anyway. Boys, number 2 is our Ivanhoe for Lee and Anthony Freedman, and for Dwayne Dunn, it's a $41 chance. I don't think his form's quite up to this. We all know that he's got the feet problems. You can. If he wins, I won't be. Ralphie, your thoughts?
I think he's just a very good talent.
Yep.
But I think he's at his best inferior to Hartman.
Yep.
And as you've touched on, it's just seems such a beacon that all the shoeing changes. Again, who will he gets the great Lee Freedman, and if he wins, we'll say, well, there's the 6th Melbourne Cup to Lee Freedman. There's Dwayne Dunn, who's been riding such brilliantly through the spring. He's a horse with ability, tick. But the reality is, sometimes you have to take a position, and my position is Hartnell's a better horse than him, and he clearly has some feet issues, so he's the type that I would rather risk, but he's got some talent that puts him under consideration.
Potts, I've got a question here. How are you rating this Caulfield Cup form? Because that's one of the races that sort of ties in with a few runners here, where he ran 6th last start.
It was a heavily wind-affected day.
Yep.
It was one of the races that was run better on the day, like it was at least an even tempo, but in terms of measuring against past Caulfield Cups, it was pretty hollow. You can't possibly knock the winner because she beat them, but the horses behind her, the Scottish didn't have a particularly soft run, and he beat them all. So anything that finished behind Scottish in the Caulfield Cup for me is a no in this race. They don't have us sufficient platform to be a winning contender in this race. So our Ivanhoe is a middle pinner, a 50 to 1 chance.
Yeah, and I'm assuming he'll be against it.
Yep.
I thought his run was okay in the Caulfield Cup, considering what he did. Like, found the line well, 23.9, 12.1, his closing sectionals. But as you said, it's just the form. Is it good enough form going to a race like this? I think 41's a good enough price for him, considering the talent he has. Likes Flemington. Dwayne Dunn got over from last start and said needs 200, so I suppose that's a plus. But yeah, would like to see the sting out to really seem effective.
I agree with that, and I haven't had a close look at the forecast, but as you said, Ralphie, I think there might be a couple of showers today, and all will be enough that it'll mean that probably Mick won't have to get the water out. So that sort of slows him up a bit. Number 3 is Kurin Mirotic, the Japanese horse for Tommy Berry. He was a last start 9th of 12 at Nakayama in the All-Comers, where he was a 25 to 1 shot, and he's been running in some reasonable races over there, but like for me it just seems when he's gone up to the top class over there in Japan, he's just been absolutely towed up, and when the wins that he's had have been in some of the lower races in Japan. I don't think he's one of the better Japanese horses that they've sent out in the last couple of years. He hasn't won beyond 2,000 metres, which is a real worry for me, and he might be able to fill a place, but...
I might be completely wrong here, but wasn't his last win like 3 years ago?
That's
They space their runs.
Yeah.
I mean, Fame Game was almost a similar type of, much better horse, but a similar type of profile, wasn't he? That I think he's... Was it Fame Game or the other Japanese runner?
And Moiraki or the other one?
Hockabray.
Yeah. And
Nick knows.
I just think in simple terms, if you take your white trifecta, again, it's probably more parts of your overview with the internationals, history says, throw in the ones at big odds into your multis, because they invariably run big races. Our locals aren't much good, and then if they get the right run in transit, there's been many, while they haven't won, there've been many big odds place getters who have had their first start here, international runners, so maybe one to throw in.
Now, Potts, I've got a question here for you, because
I'm about to do the radio book.
The pearl for Mark Lambourne is the SP profile. In his last 5 starts, he started 149, 100, 88, 25, and he ran 6th in the 3,000 metre race at Hanshin, where he was $10.50, but that's in that next bracket down. So if you SP profile him, it certainly shows the class of the race that he's been running in, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always very reluctant to rule out these horses that come over from Japan, particularly if they get firm going in a strongly run 2-mile race. They're dangerous. Now, this horse is a 9-year-old, so that's sort of, I'm thinking, ugh. And his last 2 runs have not been his best. However, he's only ran in 2-mile races, and they were both fast run races, and he was in the finish of both of them. So when I was doing the race, I was sort of thinking him could be the best roughie in the race, because he's different. He's the different form. All the others you can line up, you can't possibly line him up unless you're using Fame Game, for instance. And he's been close to Fame Game in some of those races. But then I went to the market and he's $34. So he's sort of horse I might back on the tape.
Where'd you see him getting to in the run? Like, knowing the 10-0 show, he was right behind the pace, and seems to be like he's an on-pace horse. Yeah,
he'll be on pace, sure. He'll be in the first 5, and he'll probably be, either 2 or 3 wide. They sort of don't mind that, though.
From barrier 18, we'll have to cross him. You'd think that'd be the only way they could ride him.
He's not going to get a cheap run, that's for sure. So whatever he gets, he's going to earn. But these Japanese horses are always unbelievably strong. It's just dangerous putting a pen through them.
Juppy, stop getting people who actually do a lot of research. Just shut us up a bit.
We'll take a break now, and we'll come back in a moment. We'll continue on with our preview of the Melbourne Cup.